good old Rock Fakie is one of my favourite tricks. I love the feeling of zooming back down the ramp fakie. I've also found it's pretty handy as a setup trick in the half pipe configuration, as it sends you off into the other wall ready to execute a fakie trick. During my journey learning to Rock Fakie, I've been fascinated with how many different phases I've gone through. There's so many different permutations of lifting the wheels, clearing the wheels, rocking the back wheels, decking it out. Oh my gosh. So I thought I'd document this by dividing my progress into 10 phases. Learning to Rock Fakie has taken me an unusually long time. This was mostly due to fear. In the early days, I'd get to the session, approach the quarter pipe with the best of intentions, rock those front wheels over the coping, and all hell would break loose. I'd simply jump off. However, I really wanted to get the Rock Fakie, so I realised a more considered approach was needed. So for phase 1, I decided to do some practice steps on a flat bank. I found a flat bank with a bit of metal coping across the top, and this flat bank's nice because it tapers and gets steadily steeper as you go round. Quick check of the wheels to make sure they wouldn't hang up, and my goal was just to approach the flat bank, do a little pump at the bottom, get the front wheels over the coping, and then get the feeling of coming back in fakie with those wheels going over the coping. I found this pretty scary to start with, as coming unbalanced or those wheels hooking up is ever present in my mind. Falling backwards is particularly emotional. The flat bank has the advantage of having no whip to it, so you can maintain the same body position going up and then just keep that body position there to come back down. For phase 2, I selected a mellow quarter pipe with coping that didn't stick out too much. My aim here was to use my technique from the flat bank, roll the wheels over the coping, and then roll back into the quarter pipe. Now this is particularly tricky, and the chance for hang up, even with that small coping, is pretty great. I think this dribbling of the front wheels across the coping is a phase that everybody goes through. At the moment, my son JJ is learning to Rock Fakie, and he's doing the same thing, just getting that front foot pressure off enough so that those wheels will come back over the coping and not hang up. But the main issue I found with this rolling of the front wheels back over the coping is it doesn't scale up to bigger or steeper ramps, or ramps with coping that's quite proud. So at this point, I realised I needed to get a technique where I could clear those wheels back over the coping. This could be a good time to talk about the dangers associated with learning the Rock Fakie. I've come a cropper many times on this one. The main one is falling backwards. So I'd recommend a set of pads and also some sort of hip protection for that back hip when you fall off onto the hip. The other most popular way to go for a Burton and do yourself a mischief is not to commit backwards into the ramp enough, and this leads in the board shooting out, scooting across the skate park, and I found that I landed back into the quarter pipe, maybe onto the coping. That one is particularly nasty. I found the most annoying injury was jumping off the board and then the board coming back down the ramp and knifing into the ankle of my back foot. I got bored of that pretty quickly, so I found that an ankle pad helped ease the pain. I also cultivated a bail that involved stepping off with the back foot to the side of the board as opposed to stepping straight off the back of the board, thus setting up the knifey back of the board into the ankle. So phase 3 was all about working on a technique to get those front wheels clear of the coping on the way back in. For this, I went back over to my flat bank, moved down a bit to a slightly steeper part, and then as I went up the ramp, gave it a little pump, manualed the front wheels over the coping, and then on the way back in, just let the front foot pressure off so that those front wheels would hop up in the air, little sort of backwards manual for a millisecond, and then slam those wheels back down onto the ramp. Again, the flat bank meant that I didn't need to worry about committing my weight in any different way. I could just simply go up and practice this tapping of the wheels and developing of the manual. Once I got that into my muscle memory, I took it back over to my mellow quarter pipe and started practicing rolling the front wheels over the coping, getting the board to sit on the coping, commit my weight backwards into the ramp, and then timing that with a snap of the front knee upwards, just clear those wheels over and come back in. Now I found this is where I got the really big slams backwards, because I was fully committed back into the ramp and I was really trying to get those wheels over the coping like a box of chocolates. Never know what you're going to get in the early stages. Those front wheels, if they caught the coping, whoo, it was backwards at a rate of knots, landing on the hip and the elbow. With a bit of practice, managed to start getting those front wheels clear on the way back in consistently, and this became my version of the Rock Fakie for quite a while. The thing that bugged me is there was no rock to fakie. My back wheels were still in touch with the ramp. I was still doing it on mellow quarter pipes. So I was going up, those front wheels were just coming back over the coping and I'd ride away. It was at this point I entered phase 4, which was trying to push the board out over the deck and get my back wheels touching the coping. I found this took more commitment. I needed to stand more up on the top of the ramp, and coming back in, needed to really snap my front knee up to clear the wheels on the way back in. I did, however, find it really comfortable having those back wheels locked against the coping because I could push backwards, and that push backwards into the ramp helped me commit backwards, but it also set up a motion of the board coming up towards my front knee. So when I did bring that front knee up, I found the board automatically cleared, and this decked out Rock Fakie became the way that I did Rock Fakies for even longer. At this point, I got fascinated with trying to do the classic Rock Fakie, which is come up the ramp with a nice bit of speed, pump at the bottom, manual the front wheels off, miss the coping, place the centre of the board on the coping, rock the back wheels off, and then rock the back wheels on, do your manual, clear your front wheels, pop your front wheels on the deck there, and then roll away. This sets up the 3-note rhythm of bump, bump, bump that you hear when people do a really nice Rock Fakie. You can also get a 4-note rhythm if you catch the wheels on the coping and roll those over so it goes bump, 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 bump. I found developing this technique pretty heavy going. The key is to bend each knee at different times, and regular viewers will know that my knees just don't like to bend. So coming up the ramp, front knee bends more than the back. Then I place that forwards to get the board on the centre in the coping, rock the board forward, at which point both knees are pretty much the same. But if you want a bit more extension, bend that back knee a little bit more. And then coming back in, the opposite, front knee has to bend again, and it's sort of like a rocking motion. During the phase 5 practice, I sneakily entered in to phase 6, which was rocking the board forwards and trying to get those front wheels to hit the deck. Now this was the Rock Fakie that I was aiming for. Come up, rock on the centre of the board, wheels touch the deck, and then rock back in with the wheels fully clear and ride away. Touching the wheels on the deck does have a benefit. It stops the board wonking around on that coping. This phase 6 version of the Rock Fakie is the one that I now do the most often. However, sometimes I do treat myself to a little push out over the deck for that decked out back wheels onto the coping version every now and then. Getting more consistent at that classic Rock Fakie technique gave me the courage to start trying out different skateboard setups, going in with gay abandon on things that could only be described as less than suitable. My 70s skateboard setup hasn't really got a kicktail, hasn't really got much tail at all. So trying to do the Rock Fakie on that was a real leap of faith. I also gave it a whirl on my long wheelbase board. I found it pretty exciting, all that board waving around in front of me as I came back in, but it actually worked a treat. The most tricky board I've found to Rock Fakie on is my surf skate. That wobbly front truck just does not want to go backwards. So I found trying to do the Rock Fakie on the surf skate was a really good exercise, as it finessed my technique and really made me think about the key points, which were to come up, try and keep my weight nice and centre, also highlighted the foot pressures needing to be really neutral on the way back in. Coming back down that ramp, everything needed to be centred everything on the centre line. Anything slightly out of alignment, whoo, that front wheel would go berserk and I just get bucked off. There seems to be a never-ending amount of tricks out there that are in some way related to the techniques I've learned in the Rock Fakie. Here's a few variations I've stumbled across. If you've got any of your own Rock Fakie variations to share, please do leave them in the comments below. Phase 9 has been all about taking the Rock Fakie on taller and steeper ramps. I've also been introducing a little bit of jeopardy into the proceedings. Things like pull coping, which sticks out a lot, can provide its own special challenge. I've found that when attempting the Rock Fakie on the taller ramps, the technique pretty much feels the same. However, the amount of jeopardy is vastly increased, and therefore it's the fear factor that I've found I've needed to overcome. As soon as I've got up there and really trusted in my technique and trusted myself I was going to make it back in, I found it not too bad. And the real cut-off point was ramps over about 5 foot. So going into the 6 and 7 foot range, the deep end of the local bowl was definitely a breakthrough for me when I finally started to get a Rock Fakie on that 7 foot section. I've also found that steepness can provide a significant challenge. The ramp doesn't necessarily need to be tall, just a bit of steepness really puts the cat amongst the pigeons. At the local street orientated skate park, there was a ledge that I really wanted to try board sliding. So to get off of this one, I wanted to come off with a sneaky Rock Fakie. As a bit of preparation, I thought I'd try out the Rock Fakie, and she's pretty whippy. So much so that I found that if I brought my front knee up too far to clear those front wheels, that I could catch the tail on the transition on the way back in, and that led for quite a nasty sequence of events. However, with a bit of experimentation, I managed to get the feel for getting that board back in on that super whippy transition. I've also found that the local spine ramp introduces a bit of jeopardy and is a really fun challenge. Just doing a standard Rock Fakie feels pretty weird. I found the fact there was no deck in front of me slightly off-putting, and that was enough in the moment to make me want to bail out. However, once I committed to a few, I found it pretty fun, and I started pushing the envelope, seeing if I could get right up on the top of that coping. It's possible to offer the board out totally flat. Now this is a Rock Fakie that isn't usually available due to the deck and the height of the wheels kicking the board up at a little bit of an angle. So getting that board out flat into the mid-air and then bringing her back in took a bit of courage. I found this exercise to be good training when trying to do the fakie transfer over the spine. For the fakie transfer, come up the ramp, get the back wheels over the coping, and then the rest is exactly the same as the Rock Fakie. So just keep falling backwards, front knee up to clear those wheels, and over she goes. Plenty of jeopardy in this one, and I've come a cropper from the fakie over the spine quite a few times. Always ends pretty emotionally. If you're interested in the nitty gritty of doing that fakie spine transfer, then feel free to go back and check out my spine transfer video. I'm now entering phase 10, which is the stuff of fantasy, the Rock Fakie on a vert ramp. I'm also really intrigued by the super fast Rock Fakie, so just coming in, dabbing the board, tapping it on, and then coming back in. Well, that's it for this episode. Let me know which phase you're at in the comments below. Also, if you're new to the channel, feel free to hit subscribe. I make new videos every week. As ever, my name's been John Bishop, and I'm a middle-aged guy learning how to skate.